The Cursed Halls of Blackthorn Palace. Blackthorn Palace stood as a monument of grandeur and decay, perched on a windswept hill overlooking the forgotten village of Eldermire. Built centuries ago by a mad king, the palace was said to have been cursed from its inception. Locals whispered of a massacre on the night of its unveiling, a bloody revolt that claimed the king's life and everyone within its walls. Since then, Blackthorn's doors had remained shut, its windows dark, and its halls silent. Yet those who wandered too close spoke of flickering lights, soft laughter, and mournful cries that echoed on the wind. Years later, rumors of hidden treasure within the palace reached the ears of Marcus, an ambitious historian. Determined to uncover its secrets and make his name, he convinced a small group of fellow scholars, Eleanor, a linguist, Peter, an archaeologist, and Sam, a skeptic journalist, to join him on an expedition into the cursed estate. They arrived on a stormy evening, the palace looming like a shadow against the bruised sky. Its once ornate facade was weathered and cracked, and the towering gates creaked open as if inviting them in. The air was heavy with the scent of rot and damp stone as they stepped into the grand foyer, their footsteps muffled by layers of dust. Ornate chandeliers hung precariously, cobwebbed and dull, while portraits of long-dead royals seemed to follow them with their painted eyes. "This place is incredible," Marcus whispered, his voice tinged with awe. "Imagine what we'll find." But Eleanor was uneasy. The inscriptions on the walls, written in a language older than any she'd encountered, seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. "We shouldn't be here," she murmured, her fingers brushing against one of the carved symbols. "This place, it doesn't want us here." Peter dismissed her fears. "It's just a building," he said. "A fascinating one, yes, but bricks and mortar can't harm us." Sam stayed silent, the journalist in her observing the other's unease with growing discomfort. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. As night fell, the group ventured deeper into the palace, their lanterns casting eerie shadows on the walls. They discovered a massive ballroom, its once polished floor littered with broken glass and decayed furniture. In the center of the room was an ornate mirror, its gilded frame tarnished but the glass unsettlingly pristine. The group felt drawn to it, as though it were calling to them. "I've read about this," Marcus said, his voice trembling with excitement. "The Mirror of Blackthorn. Legend says it shows you your deepest desires." He stepped forward, his reflection rippling unnaturally in the glass. The others watched as the mirror showed a grand version of Marcus, celebrated, wealthy, adored. But as he leaned closer, his reflection's smile grew wider, and its eyes darkened until they were pools of black. Before Marcus could pull away, his reflection lunged through the glass, gripping him by the throat and dragging him inside. The others screamed as Marcus vanished, the surface of the mirror rippling like water before going still. His reflection now stood within the glass, its twisted smile taunting them. "We have to leave," Eleanor whispered, tears streaming down her face. But the door they had entered through was gone, replaced by a solid wall of stone. Panic set in as the palace seemed to come alive. The chandelier swung violently, the walls groaned, and a low, guttural whisper filled the air. The group stumbled into the hallways, but the layout of the palace had changed. Corridors stretched impossibly long, twisting and looping back on themselves. Doors led to bricked-up passages, and staircases descended endlessly into darkness. Peter was the next to fall. While examining an ancient suit of armor, he heard the faint sound of weeping. Unable to resist, he followed it into a small chapel. There, a ghostly figure of a woman knelt before an altar, her sobs shaking her frail form. Peter reached out to comfort her, but the moment his hand touched her shoulder, her head snapped around, revealing hollow eyes and a mouth full of jagged teeth. She screamed, a sound so piercing it shattered the stained glass windows, and Peter crumpled to the floor, lifeless. Eleanor and Sam fled, their lanterns flickering. They found themselves in the throne room, where a massive stone throne sat beneath a tapestry of battle scenes. The air grew colder as a figure materialized on the throne, a spectral king with hollow eyes and a crown of thorns. His voice echoed through the chamber, dripping with malice. "You have trespassed on my domain. Now you shall become part of it." The floor beneath them cracked and black tendrils rose, snaring Eleanor. She screamed as they dragged her into the darkness, her voice fading until only Sam remained. Desperate, Sam turned to the mirror, now standing in the center of the throne room. She saw her reflection, bloodied and terrified, but it whispered to her, urging her to step closer. "You can escape," it said, "but only if you take their place." Tears streamed down Sam's face as the king's specter loomed over her. The tendrils inched closer. In her final act of defiance, she smashed the mirror with a broken piece of stone, shattering it into countless shards. For a moment, silence reigned. But then the palace shuddered, its foundations groaning as the walls began to collapse. The king roared, his ghostly form dissipating into smoke, and Sam felt herself falling into the void. When the townspeople found the palace the next morning, it was nothing more than a heap of rubble. Of the 4 explorers, there was no trace except for a single shard of the mirror buried in the ruins. If you looked into it, you could still see their faces, trapped and screaming, forever part of Blackthorn Palace.